Ghosting can feel like it's everywhere in gay dating, and let's face it, it can really hurt. So, how did this lack of clear communication get so normalized in our community, and what can we do about it? Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Better Gay Dating podcast. My name is Ed, and I'm a dating and relationship coach for gay and bi men. So, you've been ghosted. You met someone and it felt like you were really clicking, and maybe for the first time in a while, you felt excited about where things might go. But then he stops replying. It's like he disappeared off the face of the earth, and yes, it stings. But here's the thing, statistically, most of us have been on both sides of this equation. Dating app Hinge actually asked their users in 2020, and here's what they found. 91% of people said they'd been ghosted, ouch, but 63% said they'd ghosted someone else. But a decisive 85% said they'd rather be rejected directly than be ghosted, even if the rejection hurt. So ghosting isn't just about how two people interact, it's about the culture of how we all treat each other when we're building connections, even if we know that disappearing in the face of uncomfortable conversations isn't great. So let's talk about what ghosting is, why it hurts, and what we can do to build a culture of better communication in gay dating. Stick around, and I'll also give you some templates for messages you can send when you want to turn someone down without just disappearing. So first of all, a definition. Ghosting, as you probably know, is when someone cuts off contact in dating without warning or explanation. You're talking to them one day like normal, and suddenly they've completely disappeared. But ghosting isn't really just about a relationship or conversation ending. It's when this sudden withdrawal happens after enough of a connection has been built up that the sudden disappearance hurts. It leaves an emotional void that, given the circumstances, feels especially inconsiderate, invalidating, or just unkind. Because the truth is, rejection in general isn't much fun. Rejection is an important part of dating. It keeps people who aren't compatible or otherwise a good match for each other away from each other so they can be with partners who are right for them. But in the moment, that's often not much reassurance. Most rejections hurt on some level, and most tend to spark some level of anxiety or pain. In fact, research shows that social rejection causes a similar brain response to physical pain, so that's fun. But why does ghosting especially sting, and why do people do it? Well, ghosting really just adds an extra shitty layer on top of all that because it isn't an especially considerate or kind way to end a relationship. And if that wasn't enough, it often is extra triggering for gay and bi men. For us, the lack of respect and emotional safety ghosting creates often does cut deeper. Because in a world where we often don't feel fundamentally respected or safe in general, it can poke at the wounds most of us carry that we don't deserve to feel seen, safe, and valued. Or it's just a painful extra reminder that for us, deep and mutual connection really can be hard to find. But if it's that hurtful, why do people do it? Well, in general, most ghosting is really a form of self-protection. Rejecting someone usually isn't much fun on either side. It's not much fun to be rejected, but unless you're a complete sociopath, it's usually not much fun to reject others either. And so ghosting is a way people avoid an uncomfortable but necessary conversation by simply disappearing instead. But at the same time, as gay and bi men, our emotional conditioning can also make us more likely to ghost others, which adds another layer to this. Basically, as queer people, most of us have felt rejected for being ourselves in a way that made someone else uncomfortable, or just for expressing how we truly feel. So at best, we learn to continuously self-edit and leave out details that might upset other people. And at worst, we internalize that being upfront about our feelings is actively dangerous. And that's why, whether it's about ghosting or otherwise, many necessary but vulnerable conversations in gay dating simply don't happen. Which only helps to create this culture we have where direct and honest communication often only happens rarely, or we just treat each other as a bit disposable. And obviously this does have consequences for how we connect with each other and how we feel about ourselves. That said, I wanted to mention a few caveats and nuances here that sometimes get missed. First of all, not all communication ending is ghosting. If cutting off communication is a boundary because someone made you feel unsafe, that's not ghosting. Also, not replying to someone you've already politely turned down isn't ghosting either. And also, the point at which a connection is strong enough that someone disappearing suddenly feels like ghosting is not the same for everyone or every connection. Most of us don't feel ghosted if after 2 app messages someone just forgets to reply, but if we'd been in a serious connection with someone for 3 months, I think most of us would expect to be told if that person wanted to end it. But after one date, if you invite someone to hang out again and they don't reply, some might feel hurt by that. Others might just shrug it off as part of dating in 2020, whatever. But the key here is that though ghosting can feel personal, it almost never is. Sometimes it's just about app culture in general. People disappear from apps because they need a break, or they met someone else, or they've just lost interest in the app, and they're just not going to announce it to everyone they've spoken to. And that often does feel disappointing, especially if you like the person. But I think to a large extent, this is just a feature of the apps. So accepting that reality without making it say anything about your worth can save you a lot of emotional energy here. But when a breakup conversation really would be kind, it's usually about the person who can't find the courage or consideration to tell you where they stand and not you. Because if you have built up a bit of a connection with someone, it is kind to let them know where you stand with them. Whatever that may be, it gives them clarity and a chance to move forward with or without you. And that doesn't mean everyone who hits you up on an app with a hey deserves a paragraph on how you feel about them. But if you've built a bit of a connection with someone, clear communication really does go a long way. So the phrase you don't owe anyone anything in dating is true in the sense that you don't owe anyone who's not a good fit for you a date, a relationship, or even a lengthy conversation. But if we want to build a softer, less wounding dating culture and really be in community with each other, we do owe each other at least basic consideration and respect. And clear communication is an important part of that. And so it would be great if me saying all that just solved ghosting forever. But assuming it doesn't, how is it best to respond anytime you do get ghosted? The key here is strong boundaries with yourself and the person who just disappeared on you. The strong boundaries with yourself are really about not internalizing that someone turning you down is a statement about your value as a human being. Someone ghosting you doesn't say anything about your worth, it just tells you about their capacity or ability to communicate. And often ghosting is about the other person's avoidance or fear of vulnerability. It's about their discomfort with communicating when it matters most, not how much you deserve to be respected and considered in your relationships. So having strong boundaries means remembering that and not internalizing that someone else's behavior here says anything about you. It also means focusing on you, how you feel and what you need to do to move on. Sometimes a promising connection that ends after 2 dates can feel more painful than a connection that lasted 2 months. The pain and often grief that comes with relationship endings can be unpredictable like that. And so if you need to take some time to sit with those feelings or take a break before getting back to dating or just find someone to talk to about how you feel, then great. Having strong boundaries also means accepting that if someone has made clear they don't want to be in your life for whatever reason, that you're going to accept that. So you're not going to keep trying to get their attention. You're not going to send them 10 paragraphs on how unreasonable they've been, not necessarily because it's not true, but because it's often not the thing that's going to help you heal and move on with your life. Which is why, honestly, if you get ghosted, the best policy is often just to respect the dead. Let them pass over to the afterlife, metaphorically, and focus on finding someone who is ready to communicate with you directly or who does treat you with more respect and consideration next time. Because that's really the truth with ghosting. If someone couldn't face the vulnerability of breaking up with you directly, either that person just doesn't really have your well-being in mind, or that lack of vulnerability absolutely would have limited your relationship together in other ways. And in general, if you keep getting ghosted, it's worth giving some thought to what you're looking for or just allowing in a new partner. There's no foolproof way of foreseeing ghosting, but there are often signs of the disrespect or emotional avoidance that causes ghosting. So if you're pursuing partners who are emotionally closed off because it feels safer or familiar to you, are you actively pursuing people who aren't kind to you? Or if your partner regularly shuts down emotionally or criticizes you or dismisses your feelings and you just think, oh, but I still love him, are you ultimately tolerating people who aren't kind or considerate with you? And if so, why? It really sucks when getting ghosted is the way you learn a connection is over, but it's really just a sign that that person probably wasn't ready to treat you with kindness and respect. And if that becomes a pattern, it usually is an opportunity to think about your expectations or values, or just how well you're choosing partners who do treat you with kindness and respect. And this is really the key with having strong boundaries here. Ultimately, we can't control how others treat us, but we can control who we let into our lives, and we can control how we respond to how others treat us, including what we tell ourselves their behavior must mean about us. So that said, here are my 3 key takeaways for all of us for combating ghosting in gay dating. First, let's practice clear and kind communication where it's necessary. I'll give you some templates on what you could say in a moment. Second, we also need to learn to accept rejection gracefully. One reason people ghost is that they were once kind and direct about rejecting someone and that person took it really badly or just wouldn't take no for an answer. So they thought, well, why bother putting effort in next time? So we have to be good at both giving and receiving rejection gracefully when it's necessary. Third, on the apps especially, it's a really good idea not to emotionally invest in a connection particularly until you know it has promise and he'll likely treat you with kindness and respect. One thing with the apps is that some people are talking to more people than they can really properly keep up with, or just the way the apps are built to keep people swiping like a slot machine means it's easy to end up focused on those new connections over the conversations we haven't replied to. So my own rule for a long time has been if it's still on the app and we haven't agreed to meet in person, I take literally nothing personally. And this isn't about emotionally closing yourself off. It's really just a kind of strategic detachment, knowing that many, even most app conversations won't lead to an in-person date. And this can really help with app fatigue or just dating fatigue in general. And how about those texts to send instead of ghosting someone? Let's talk about them, plus a few other templates for common situations. The key here is to keep things kind, to the point, and honest. These are just templates, so obviously you should customize them to fit your exact situation. It's also okay to soften the language in them if you feel that's necessary. So here goes. If you go on a first date, he invites you on a second, but you're not feeling it, you could say something like this. Hey, it was great to meet you last night. I loved chatting about whatever it was you guys connected over. I wasn't really feeling the kind of connection I look for in a romantic partner, but hope you find what you're looking for. Super simple, super direct, also warm and friendly. You don't need to send this if it feels like you weren't a match for him either, but if he asks about hanging out again, this is a really great template to use. If you've been chatting on an app and someone invites you to meet, but you're not feeling that, you could say something like this. Thanks for the invitation. It was fun chatting, but I don't think we're a great match and I don't want to waste your time. Hope you find what you're looking for. With this one, some people especially don't take this situation gracefully. And really that's on them. Just because you've matched or chatted doesn't obligate anyone into meeting. Sometimes a clear deal breaker comes up, or the chat's just not very engaging, or they're just not trying very hard to get to know you. So if they do push back on this, you don't need to explain at length. You can always just say something like, hey, thanks, I'm going to pass this time, but I wish you all the best, and leave it at that. And then if you've been on a few dates and you don't want to continue the connection, you could try, hey, it's been great getting to know you the past few weeks. I've had a think and this isn't really clicking for me the way I'd hoped, so I think we should break things off here. I'm sorry, you can add that, you can leave that part out if you want. And then you just finish with something like, take care of yourself. On the other side, if someone messages you with a kind but direct rejection, most of the time I actually do recommend responding in a simple way. For you, it helps close the loop, and wishing them well is a sign you respect yourself enough not to pursue someone who isn't available to you. It's also a way of acknowledging that you're grateful that they were direct with you and didn't just disappear. So yeah, thanks for letting me know. All the best is a great response. Or if you want, you could say something like, sure, that's a shame, but I understand. Take care. Then, if someone hasn't replied to a message of yours and you want to check in with them, I don't recommend sending, hey, you didn't respond, what's going on? Or hello with a question mark, or just a question mark. They can come across as a bit aggressive or impatient over text. So just something like, hey, how's it going? Is often enough. If they've been meaning to respond but are genuinely forgotten, they'll probably do it. Or you could try something like, hey, just wanted to check in. Are you still up for meeting next week? Pressuring someone, especially someone you don't really know, rarely helps in this situation. You're just gently trying to remind them to respond if they're genuinely interested in getting to know you. And if they are, they probably will. And if they aren't, well, now you know. And finally, like I said, the best way to respond to someone disappearing on you is usually just to respect the dead and live your best life without them. But in some circumstances, if you do want to officially close the connection because it'll help you move on, you could. And in that case, you could say something like this. Hey, I've taken this as a sign you're not interested in pursuing this anymore. Honestly, it does hurt you couldn't tell me that directly. I would have respected your decision if you'd have told me that. I wish you the best. So you're not really blaming or criticizing. You're just saying, I guess this is where things stand and you could have been more direct with me. I'd obviously save this for situations where an ending message or conversation really felt necessary. This is obviously not one to use after a short conversation on an app. And also, I have friends and clients who sent messages like this and got back an apology of sorts. I know people who never heard anything back, and people who also got an unkind message back. So that can happen. But whatever you do here, the key with all of this is that we all have the power to shape our dating culture for the better. We can't control other people's behavior, but we can control how we show up when we're dating, including with people we know for whatever reason aren't right for us. Because again, as Hinge found out, most people would prefer to hear no directly. So often our fear that someone else won't take it gracefully is just that, it's just fear. And even if it isn't, if we do want to create a more respectful, more connected, or just kinder dating culture, mustering the courage to have these difficult but necessary conversations is a really important place to start. Thanks, as always, for listening. If you know someone who you think would benefit from this podcast, please be sure to let them know about it. And for more about working with me one-to-one, just head to bettergaydating.com. Have a great week, and I'll catch you next time.